Watch this.
What I said, which is, he's in hell, is I think that is an accurate statement.
A statement that cost him his job. A former Labor Department employee tells us being fired had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with politics. She started as a Bora High student with a cause. 9 years later, her mission is personal. We talked to a Boise woman who's taking her fight against cancer to Capitol Hill. A leading man with legendary looks, but Robert Redford's legacy is more than his films, like his passion for protecting the environment, something he showcased here in Idaho.
Wrong what happened to him. I don't think anybody should be shot for their First Amendment right, but I also think if you're a bad person and something bad happens to you, I have a right, as does anybody, to share what they think about that opinion. So.
He's one of a handful of Idahoans, government employees who have been either laid off or put on leave because of what they posted to social media post-assassination of Charlie Kirk. On personal accounts, mind you, not governmental accounts. And as you heard, David Barachoa stands by what he wrote on Instagram following a vigil held for the conservative activist, propagandist, free speech advocate, whatever you want to call him. LMAO, he wrote. Charlie is burning right now, followed by 3 fire emojis. He wrote that last Thursday, following the vigil held on the state capitol steps the night before. And it wasn't long after that David was swept up in the social media McCarthyism spurred by the likes of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. The next day, he learned he had been fired from his job with the Human Rights Commission, the Idaho Human Rights Commission, which is under the Idaho Department of Labor. David admits being raised in a Basque family, a matriarchal culture, and with 2 sisters, he does lean a little bit left. But he made it clear those politics in no way showed themselves at a job he held for fewer than 6 months, answering phones as a record specialist. Since losing his government job, David has refused to remain silent, following the same ideology that caused him to post his comment about the death of Charlie Kirk in the first place.
Because I don't think that we should be whitewashing his history to all of a sudden act like he was a person who never did anything wrong just because of what happened to him, I think is silly, and I think we have a duty to correct the record and make sure that history does remember both sides. Like, you can have both of those things in your hands, the fact that he was a victim of political violence, but also stowed the same division that ultimately, I think, contributed to what happened to him. So,
do you think what you posted sums that up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I said, you can say was insensitive, and I think that people can point the finger and say it was divisive, but I think the main difference here is that Charlie Kirk was somebody who did this kind of thing for a living, and I'm sure he was acutely aware of the risks that he took signing up for that job and using his freedom of speech to do the things that he wanted to do.
What you said isn't glorifying political violence?
I don't think so, because what I was speaking on was after. Look, if he had passed away in a car accident, I probably would have said the same thing. That's not the situation we're in, but I don't think me talking about where he went for eternity is necessarily glorifying the political violence.
You could have said nothing. I mean, as somebody who's familiar with what happens on social media, you could have said nothing.
Yeah, I'm not a fence sitter. Ultimately, silence is the biggest enemy. I think that we have a duty to, like I said, make sure that history remembers the actual truth of the situation.
And you lost your job because of it?
Absolutely, yeah, I lost my job.
Is that what they told you?
They didn't really tell me much, to be honest. I woke up Friday morning to an email from HR that just said, I'm no longer employed, effective Friday, August 12th.
Did you ask why?
I did, yeah. Well, what was written in the letter was in unsatisfactory completion of probationary period. I was coming up on my 6th month. So when I asked why, they just said, you didn't complete your probationary period. And that's the only information I ever received.
What'd you think of that?
People that were bigger than the Department of Labor stepped in and forced their hand. I had never once been disciplined, never been written up. Just a few weeks ago, texted my boss and said, hey, are there performance evaluations? I would like to get some pointers on, what I could improve on. And my boss was just like, well, you'll get an official performance evaluation after your 6-month probationary period. But as of right now, you're the best person we've ever had on the phones. And I think you're doing a really good job. And so I felt good, you know.
Now what?
I want to get my story out there. I think it speaks for itself, but ultimately my desire is exposure, I guess. I want this story out there. I want people to see what's happening in places like Idaho.
So you think this is a First Amendment thing?
I do, and case law would agree. I think that what we're dealing with here is a loud minority. I think the majority of people would probably say that what I said was wrong and insensitive, but I also don't deserve to get fired from my job because of it. I think that's what most people are going to believe.
So no regrets?
None whatsoever. I've always been a person who's been outspoken on the things I believe in, and that's not going to change now. I'm here right now against the wishes of my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my girlfriend, my girlfriend's mom. Virtually everybody said I shouldn't be coming on the news, but I'm going to do what I want to do.
Why? Why are you doing it then?
It's important. People need to speak up for what's right, and I think this is right. You shouldn't have to worry about getting fired because your boss doesn't like something you tweeted from a private account.
David wanted to make clear his comment does not reflect on the people he worked with at the Idaho Human Rights Commission. They're good people, he told us, and if he regrets anything about this situation, it's that they now have 8 people instead of 9 to deal with the hundreds of claims from across the state of Idaho. For their part, the Department of Labor told us they cannot comment on why David was terminated, personnel matter and all, but they did confirm as of Friday, Mr. Barry Ochoa no longer works for the Human Rights Commission. The IHRC remains committed to maintaining the public's trust and upholding its core value of fairness, end quote. David told us he plans to speak with an attorney to find out his legal options with regard to the First Amendment. As funding for the National Institutes of Health gets debated in Congress, there's a worry about what a cut to that budget might do to cancer research. That's because one of the institutes of the NIH is the National Cancer Institute, which allocated more than $7 billion to research, prevent, and fight cancer. So any cuts to that would certainly impact any ground gained on America's second leading cause of death. There's also the imminent expiration of the Affordable Care Act, the tax credits. But not if a Bora High grad has something to say about it. Joe Paris spoke with an Idaho advocate on the ground in D.C. who's saying a lot in the fight for cancer patients.
Sometimes you need to travel a great distance to have a conversation face to face.
I'm actually outside. We are having a gathering and kind of like getting excited and talking about why we're here today and hearing from some of the Congress women and men about their experiences with cancer.
This conversation needed in Washington, D.C.
Outside the Capitol. So the Capitol is right there.
Anita Sloan from Boise represents Idaho as a part of the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network.
We're here to ask 3 issues. One is that we are asking for increases and protection of cancer research funding. And we are also asking for the support of the finally getting the MCED, Multi-Cancer Early Detection Act passed, and then as well as supporting a pathway for extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Sloan's advocacy journey actually began when she was a student at Bora High School. She wanted to make a difference in her community. She began testifying at the state capitol in Boise. Now she's at a much bigger building.
Started with ACSCAN. I've been a volunteer since I was about 16. I was a Bora High School student, and I testified because that was when vaping became more prominent in younger generations, especially my age.
9 years later, her mission has become deeply personal.
I went from having no connections to cancer, and I just wanted to do my part as a high school student to our community. And fast forward 9 years later, I have multiple family members who have been diagnosed with cancer. I have many friends who have had lost parents or are dealing with family members currently fighting cancers. Yeah, it is personal. Yeah.
She explains the stakes are high for Idaho. About 11,000 people in the Gem State are expected to be diagnosed with cancer this year. Sloan says that number is what drives her advocacy.
We are here to ensure that that number continues to decrease rather than increase every year.
The Trump administration has proposed cutting about $18 billion from the National Institutes of Health, which would roll back cancer research funding to levels last seen in about 2003. At the same time, health insurance tax credits that help more than 100,000 Idahoans afford coverage are set to expire at the end of the calendar year. For Sloan, this fight is about more, though, than just numbers.
There's cancer disparities, and being able to figure out treatment that especially allows them to not have to travel so far to be able to get treatment, especially at the bigger hospitals. Your prognosis, your treatment of cancer should not depend on your zip code and where you live. Everyone deserves to have access to affordable health care, and I believe that it should be for every single person everywhere in this country, and everywhere.
Sloan is meeting with Idaho's congressional delegation, and she says that she's appreciative of the support they have shown for cancer detection legislation, but more work remains to be done.
They have all co-sponsored the Multi-Cancer Early Detection Screening Act. So we are here to thank them.
The bipartisan Medicare Multi-Cancer Early Detection Screening Coverage Act, said it would help Medicare cover new blood tests that can screen for multiple cancers simultaneously once they get their FDA approval. It's demonstrated clinical benefit. And Idaho Senator Mike Crapo is a lead sponsor.
We are also here to ask for those cancer research funding and then ask for the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
And a huge conversation are those health care tax credits. They help make health insurance more affordable for people who buy their coverage through the ACA marketplace. If Congress does not extend those tax credits before they expire at the end of the year, 4.2 million people across the United States are projected to be uninsured. That's according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. And in Idaho, the tax credit actually makes health care affordable for over 100,000 residents on healthcare.gov plans. Brian, Congress has until September 30th to pass the new federal budget, and new this afternoon there was talks of adding more funding in terms of protection for certain members of the government in Washington, D.C. However, Democrats pushing for things like renewed, credits for the ACA plans have not made it into the budget proposal. So in a few weeks, September 30th, there could be a potential government shutdown looming.
Right.
Supporters of the ACA credits this afternoon have said that they are going to play hardball on this. And this is something that is very personal for people like Anita, who went out to D.C.
We've heard from the congressional delegation before how they like certain things about a bill but had to vote against it because they didn't like the overall throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Could that be this case here?
It possibly could be, and this does tie back to the big, beautiful bill. I will say, though, as he mentioned in that story, Idaho Senator Mike Crapo, the sponsor on that MSET Act. We're hoping to hear from him later this week about his support for that initiative.
All right, looking forward to that. Thanks, Joe.
From his long career on screen to his widespread efforts to protect the environment, Robert Redford leaves behind a legacy that will surely stand the test of time. Part of that legacy is rooted right here in the Gem State. You know, the 208 is rooted in continuing the conversation, and this is a reminder. Now's your chance to chime in. Text us at 208-321-5614. As always, make sure you include your name and the hashtag the208. And if you keep it clean and clever and concise, we might share yours at the end of the show.
Well, I know my mom isn't the only one feeling sad today at the news of Robert Redford passing away. I remember hearing this a lot growing up about how good-looking Robert Redford was. The star of classics like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, and don't forget The Sting, his only Oscar nom, by the way. He died in his sleep in his home in Utah at the age of 89. Leading man and heartthrob, sure, but Redford would move behind the camera to win him an Academy Award for Ordinary People. Remember that movie? It was shortly after that when Redford took over a little-known film festival in Utah, renaming it the Sundance Film Festival, which many credit as helping to save the indie film industry. But even before that, he was a champion of environmental causes, and that's what brought him to Idaho in the late 1970s and early 1980s to initiate a partnership with the University of Idaho and Washington State, creating a new environmental education program. So today we're taking you back to 1982 for that first class of the Robert Redford Institute.
This is Palouse Falls, created thousands of years ago by the Snake River. Then the floods came. With such a force, these falls were pushed back over 5 miles. But that was just part of the evolution. In the 1960s, anthropologists discovered ancient human bones dating back 13,000 years. There are some who believe the area beyond Marms Pond holds more secrets of the past. For some, the discoveries are just interesting bits of history, but some of these students believe it may hold a key to the future. They make up the Resource Management Institute's Pioneer Class, a new program founded by actor Robert Redford. He created the institute out of desire to see our environment managed properly. His dream is shared by his students.
We do have a limited amount of land base that we have accessible to development, and it's important that we can key in on where those important areas are and where we can alleviate some of the conflicts.
Redford says he would one day like to see the students making important environmental decisions, creating a balance between valuable resources and progress.
Who's making the decisions that lead to the loss of farming as a viable industry? I don't know. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to go on an evolutionary cycle basis. I don't know. But I'll feel a lot more comfortable about it if I feel that the people making those decisions are qualified, and I don't think enough are.
Richard Leakey also has an interest in the future, but his lessons come from the past. He's the son of Louis and Mary Leakey, whose work in anthropology has formed much of the foundation for present theories. Leakey has continued their research. He believes human achievement is tied to our environment.
If we can understand why we're as we are, why we have wars, why there's aggression, why there's prejudice, then I think we can perhaps deal with it. And I think too long we've proceeded on the basis of simply isolated ignorance.
With photographer Bob Martindale and Chopper 2, Rochelle Overshock, KREM 2 News.
Well, the nonprofit chose U of I and WSU because of their close proximity, their longstanding collaborative relationship, and their access to diverse natural resources, as you saw. But the program was not without controversy. Despite the attempt to avoid being labeled an environmentalist, Redford's passion for the outdoors earned him that title in some circles. And because of his radical reputation, some of the local newspaper editors and lobbying groups at the time suspected ulterior motives. Eventually, funding issues plagued the program, and it would shut down by 1985, just 3 years later. But that wasn't Redford's only tie to the Gem State. Back in 1989, he came to Idaho to stump for the then Governor Cecil Andrus. He helped the governor raise around $200,000 for his re-election campaign, with about 2,000 people paying $100 to hear Robert Redford speak, and another 500 paying $500 to eat dinner with the actor before that event. Redford is survived by his wife, 2 daughters, and 7 grandchildren.
81 degrees right now in Boise. Lots of sunshine today, and a lot of southwest Idaho seeing those very similar conditions. We have a ridge of high pressure building in this week, so it will continue to make our temperatures inch up over the next several days. So we're upper 70s, low 80s right now for the Treasure Valley, mid 70s for the Magic Valley, with the mountains a little cooler, of course, low 70s, upper 60s for Stanley. It's going to be a very mild evening, dipping into the 70s in the next couple hours. Overnight lows will probably be in the 50s for the Treasure Valley. Then we will warm up slightly more than what we saw today. 83 is what we're expecting tomorrow in Boise, but some spots in the Treasure Valley will be pushing the upper 80s. Caldwell looking at 87, Magic Valley still in the upper 70s, low 80s with mountains in the 70s. We have lots of sunshine and warmth for the next week. We are in our final week of summer. Fall officially starts next Monday. We're looking at sticking in the 80s for the next 7 days.
A tort claim has been filed against the Boise School District over Idaho's transgender bathroom law. And if you're in the market for an event center that holds, around 12,000 people, well, we now know what that starting bid price might be. Here's Richard Rodriguez with the 411.
We now know the names of the people involved in the deadly road rage shooting in Payette County. The Payette County Sheriff's Office has identified the driver who was shot and killed as 32-year-old man named Charles Vincent Avery from Salem, Oregon. The shooter was identified as a 71-year-old man from Boise, but his identity has not been released. No charges have been filed at this time. The Idaho Family Policy Center has filed a tort claim against the Boise School District. The claim was filed on the behalf of a Boise family whose daughter attended Boise High School. While attending Boise High, the student says a biological male used the girls' restroom multiple times during last school year. The claim states the student encountered the biological male in the bathroom twice. IFPC says Boise High told the family that the biological male had special permission to use the girls' restroom due to his gender support plan. The school district now has 90 days to respond before a lawsuit can be filed. The Eagle Police Department is asking for your help identifying this person in relation to an ongoing theft investigation. If you recognize this person, Eagle PD is asking you to submit an anonymous tip at the Ada County Sheriff's Office's new app. The city of Caldwell will not annex property for a new housing development. The city council voted no last night. The application was requesting a special use permit for the Kane Center subdivision on the corner of Homedale and Montana. It was expected to be a mixed-use development with 20 apartment buildings, gas station, drive-through facility, and other commercial units. Engineers will be reworking the proposed plan. The fate of the Ford Idaho Center is now up to the public. During a meeting last night, the Nampa City Council voted that the property is underused and that it should be left up to the public as whether or not the venue gets sold. In a 4-2 vote, the council also decided to set the minimum bid for the venue to be $75 million. The next public hearing is October 6th. That's the 411. On the 208, I'm Richard Rodriguez.
All right, lots of comments today. We're trying to get through as many as quickly as possible. This one from Chris Bailey in Meridian. How anyone can be pleased that someone has died is beyond me. I'd fire them. And as a private business owner, you have a right to do that in Idaho with an at-will state. But the gray area is kind of in the governmental employment, as we discussed yesterday. Many private employers and government offices have images to protect, therefore won't tolerate insensitive people over matters like this. You, Brian, and Channel 7, on the other hand, give them a platform to associate this kind of opinion with their employer. Shame on you. This is Casey from Caldwell. Or you could say we're advocates of the First Amendment and free speech, possibly put it that way. I'm not a fan of Charlie Kirk, MAGA, or Trump, but since I believe it is wrong for them to use violent rhetoric and say things that divide us, it's wrong for me as well, says Paul. Sad commentary on the Idaho Human Rights Commission. Isn't terminating Mr. Barachoa contrary to their purpose of protecting the rights of Idaho's citizens? Asked Denise in Meridian. Kudos to David for having the conviction to speak the truth. We could be in a better place if more people followed his lead, says Randy. Meanwhile, he wants to work with the Department of Labor, and he laughs at the assassination of a human being. Termination was appropriate, says Bobby. But kudos to the young man for this statement. Silence is the biggest enemy right now, according to Jen in Boise. We'll be back tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.